Good morning and welcome. For a lot of people, it's the day after Donald Trump was sworn in as president, and this is rippling across the world. But we are here live for you in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital. I'm Kaido Kikulu.
And I'm Jeffrey. It's almost a brand new day for you to do big things and better things. America is doing theirs. It's now time for you to do yours. So every day that is passing by is an opportunity to get better at what you do. Welcome to the program. I'm Jeffrey Uzama.
It looks like it's actually the swearing in of the president of the world.
Yeah.
Not the president, not just the president of America. There are a lot of people who say, come on, we have a lot of things to do in our country, bigger fish to fry, focus on what's happening in Nigeria. But hey, you have to understand how global politics works. It's said that when America sneezes, even if the world doesn't catch a full-blown cold, you're going to feel the impact. The same with China as well. So for people who have been wondering, what's so much ado about this? Anyway, it's not a new president per se. It's a president that stepped out and is stepping back in. Why is there a lot of talk about it? Well, a lot of things, the personality of the man, the context, and I'm talking about global politics, and then, of course, the decisions that have been made afterwards, the build-up to that election. It's a lot to tie together, so not to worry on the show this morning. We'll tell you about, global politics and national politics as well. But Jeffrey, this is something you I don't know if it's to say anticipated.
Well, Trump is Trump. If you know Trump, you should have known. There's nothing you shouldn't expect. You already know the personality of the man. He's a showman. He likes to be the highlight. Some people call him a narcissistic nationalist, a fascist, all sorts of names. A megalomania, all sorts of names. One thing he is that he means what he says. Even though you don't understand all the things he says, but when Trump speaks, he means what he says. For instance, it was quite funny. Part of his policy pronouncement, Kaido, was saying he's going to have the external revenue service to make sure that all the tariff that's accruable to perhaps America and all of that. So we're going to go deep. I'm trying to avoid too many things, but one of the things I learned from that is the fact that it sounded like State of the Union speech rather than an inauguration speech. And then I like the level of order. It was quite cold in Washington, so they had to move it into the rotunda to have that ceremony. You can see, I don't know, Africa, we need to learn how to organize in certain parts, like some of the West do.
Come on, Jeffrey, let's focus on America.
No, we're talking America. So, for instance, where I'm saying is that you don't see security people littered all over the place, president's aides just messing the place up. And I said it at the time when President Bola Tinubu traveled to Ghana. The president of Ghana gave his speech on his inauguration day. There was no military man behind him, but our own president had a military man. What is it with being over-militarized, over-police, and our leaders in Nigeria? So, as in one of the touching moments, if you notice, when he makes his remarks and those very strong pronouncements about border, about energy, about male and female, and all the things he said, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden did not stand up in a lot of them, but when he talked about the peace deal that is ongoing in Gaza, both of them stood.
Yeah, that's a legacy, really. So thank you for holding on, or at least holding up our legacy.
Thank you for not claiming the process. He said he wanted to speak about January 6th. But I said he didn't want to scatter it because he was speaking to the inauguration.
He eventually granted pardon for at least for the non-violent people who participated in that January 6th. It's a lot to talk about, so let's dive right into what we have for you on the show this morning. And as you'll expect, U.S. politics, governance, and of course its impact on global politics leads on the show this morning. Donald Trump is back as a U.S. president, 47th, and you shall see the barrage of executive orders. I think that's a record globally, maybe for years to come.
I don't even know how many eventually.
And then he said it's going to about 70. Yeah, it's a lot. So this morning we're diving deeper into the Donald Trump presidency, barely few hours after he's made landmark decision. So how will this impact America, the world? And someone said yesterday President Tinubu should avoid a confrontation with Donald Trump, and people thought, hey, isn't that a no-brainer? Everybody did their lane. But we'll take a look at what this means for Nigeria?
So I think it's a good advice. Donald Trump can be unpredictable, but we're yet not on that table yet. I know where we are on that table. We're nowhere close to that table. We're going to get there someday as a nation, even as a continent. So let's build our economy first before we can begin to make those kind of ambitious statements. Well, ending insecurity is one of the focus we'll be doing today. Beyond that, so let's come back home. Let's leave Donald Trump and his America. Let's talk about how we can end insecurity. We've seen, telltale signs of resurgence of attacks in parts of the country, and some of the gains we've recorded is beginning to get eroded. What went wrong? What can we do better? That will be the focus of this conversation.
So we're going to be, of course, talking about some of the sects that are springing up here and there, so you get a sense of at least those trends. But of course, we're talking fighting corruption as well, but with a very interesting twist, Jeffrey. Fighting corruption with artificial intelligence. Yes, in this age of rapidly evolving technology, corruption is still present. In fact, some have said that this might even help corrupt people be more clinical, with technology. So we'll be analyzing how we can leverage artificial intelligence and the blockchain technology to combat this menace at all levels, especially in the procurement processes of ministries, departments, and agencies.
I think if we simply just make all transactions electronic, we're going to reduce corruption in Nigeria by half. Yeah. It's as simple as that. There's nothing too special. It's just that the political class, some of them don't like those kind of things. So we have to force them to be accountable. Hey, we move from there to how do we simplify farming in Nigeria? This is a conversation I really love, because this is the bone of contention. Inflation is at 39%. That is official numbers. For some people, inflation is 1,000%. For some, it's 200%. But the biggest driver of inflation in Nigeria, we've seen according to data, is food. Whether it's 20, 50, 2,000% for you as a person. How do we simplify farming to help us, provide food for our families and for ourselves? That's going to be the conversation right here on the program.
There you have it. So that's a snapshot of some of the big conversations we have for you. Be a part of the show. Head over to WhatsApp right away. Let us know what you think about... Let's start with Donald Trump, naturally. Donald Trump.
Come on, there's no way in the world right now we can avoid Donald Trump. I think it's just going to be just being clever by half. That's the only... He's the biggest conversation right now.
There you go.
One thing I remember again is the black preacher who prayed at the benediction.
Those were powerful prayers. Right?
Oh boy. I know that in such events, or at such events, your prayers or whatever it is you're doing has to be scripted. But the gentleman went and was training a lot of prayers, and of course, Martin Luther King in between all of them. I heard that Donald Trump, when he went to greet Donald Trump told him, "You're a star." The guy brought church to the Capitol.
Oh, yes.
Literally, I told them, clap your hands.
And I think that was a major part of that inauguration.
Let's bring the black element to the conversation.
And the religion. And,
yes, there's Catholic, there's Jew, and then there's Protestant.
But Donald Trump didn't put his hand on the Bible. Let's jump right into you can be part of the show.
JD Vance at least closed his eyes when they were praying.
Different people bring different inferences into events yesterday.
That's what leadership really is all about. That's why we tell leaders, you're no longer a lead, you're just no longer a regular person. So when we criticize you or praise you, that's the idea. When you were a regular person living whatever places you were living in, nobody cared about that. Now you're a leader, you blink, everybody will interpret it. You sneeze, we want to know what it is.
Right.
Because we have given you the powers of the state. You can send us to war even if we don't want to go to that war. That's how powerful you are.
So it's quite interesting.
There's nothing you will do that people are not going to talk about.
So be a part of the show on WhatsApp. But let's get into what the dailies are saying this morning. And as you would expect, they're leading with some of the stories we have talked about. And we have joining us to walk through the dailies. Adini Ifetayo, public affairs analyst, joins us via Zoom on the show this morning. So let's get right into the dailies. Mr. Ifetayo, welcome to Morning Brief. For the Nigerian Tribune is where we're starting off from this morning. And as you would expect, the Nigerian Tribune leads with Trump. Well, two stories actually Nigerian Tribune leads with, but Trump is first. It says another Trump era begins. Potential impact on Nigeria, oil, global trade, climate, gender, immigration, and he's made some of these decisions. That's the Nigerian Tribune. We started with the Nigerian Tribune. Now you see him taking the oath of office with two Bibles, really, I should say, and then the world literally stood still, Mr. Fatayo. Your thoughts on this, particularly as it concerns Nigeria and maybe Africa? Mr. Fatayo, if you could just take a moment to mute so we can get your responses through. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we can.
Oh, okay. I say yes. Sometimes the body language of a leader, we always send a signal to the led or the international community, and I'm sure all the international community, they've had a bite of Donald Trump in his first time being the president, so they know that he's a no-nonsense man, and like he always said that he's American first, and he has come again to make American great. So whatever he says, everybody just needs to take a cue. In fact, even leading to his inauguration, the peace deal in between Gaza and Israel, they were taking credit for it, that they knew that the boss is coming to town. So everybody needs to sit up. And for Nigeria, of course, nothing more, just because they are one of our allies, and of course we just need to queue behind him. I just hope this time around we'll get a better deal from his government. Of course, the immigration, I love that male is a male, a female is a female. You don't need to confuse the words, when it comes to that. So let's just hope for the best, and of course everybody must sit tight and fight in their best, because it's not business as usual.
There you go. It's funny how, anyway, you see another big story on the front page. Solid Minerals, NAS, that's the National Assembly, doubts FG's commitment to diversify economy. And this is something we have parroted for decades, really. Diversify the economy. Diversify the economy. You see the explainers under that one. Summons finance budget ministers, budget DG. Ministry of Solid Minerals budget defense deferred. So they were looking at the budget, and they were wondering, does this look like a budget that would help diversify the economy? So something with power. But this is what I want you to speak to before I move on to the next daily. NCC OK's 50% telecoms tariff hike. It's on page 6 of the Nigerian Tribune. Would you say this was inevitable?
Come on, it's too much. 50%, not even 10, not even 15%. 50% is way much. And this is where I felt the NCC should have done better. Have a seat with all the telecom service provider. If you are going to give them incentive, tax holiday, because it's the consumer, which is the Nigerian people, that will suffer the increment. We are still talking about electricity tariff. You are talking about the commodity in the market, talking about petroleum, and now you are greeting us with a New Year with a New Year gift that you 50%. So where is the place of having a feeling for the masses with what they are going through right now? So I don't think being 50% tariff increment for the telecom is a good thing for them to do at this moment in time. At least they should say that it can be done steadily. The first quarter there will be a 10% increment. In the next quarter there's going to be 30% or increase to 20% increment. Not just that. It's just January, and just come on. It's not showing that the government is having the feel of what the masses are going through right now. But I think the Nigerian consumer protection, they still need to stand up for Nigerian masses, and of course the labor and civil society, that this thing is getting too much. Who knows? Maybe they might even say they need to increase the amount we are going to pay even just to have a free air to breathe. You understand what I'm saying? But this is becoming too much. I think they can stagger it in the next 1 year. You increase it 10%, in another second quarter 15%, third quarter 30% at least. And not just rub everything on our face. It's not a good way for them to start anyway.
Okay, let's go to the Guardian, and I would like you to speak. I'll just read a few of the stories here, beginning with the major headline here. FG's free cesarean section, 104 facilities to enlist as pilot phase, records over 2,000 beneficiaries, actually 2,819 beneficiaries. And you can also see that picture of Trump taking his oath of office. Anxiety as Trump returns to power, recognizes only 2 genders. Just beneath it, you see reps declare Tinubu's 595 billion naira allocation to intelligence inadequate. I don't know which one you want to respond to. Go ahead. I just
for that intelligence 5 billion. Yes, that 5 billion allocated to intelligence. When we are talking about that, it has to do with a lot of data. We have a lot of security issue in Nigeria, and I think I'm not sure 5 billion is adequate. Maybe because
500 and over 500 billion actually, about 500 billion.
About 500 billion. Anyway, whatever it is to keep Nigeria safe and sound, I don't think there's anything that is much for them to allocate for that, and they should just use it judiciously. Investment, thank God for the AI. We should not be lagging behind, especially when it comes to the security. I think you fly a rider where you are, talking about money bring this money, that using AI to fight security. I think that's where the future lies, and I think the federal government should be doing something about that, especially when it comes to intelligent gathering, security of life and property. We should just pray that it's not the era. I remember in this country when was a carpenter or fashion designer getting a job from NCA, National Security Advisor, Dansuki Saga, I'm sure you remember. So I just hope that the money does not end in private pockets. They should, judiciously utilize in order to keep Nigeria safe and sound, and of course, intelligent gathering, which will drive our security architecture in Nigeria.
There you go. Well, let's turn our attention now to this Nigeria. This Nigeria leads again with Trump's swearing in, but another angle to this says, God saved me from assassin's bullet. Trump at swearing in says America's decline over, golden age here. Ex-presidents Bush, Obama, Biden witness grand event, Hillary present, Michelle stays away. There'll only be 2 genders recognized by the US government, male and female. Of course, there's the citizenship by birth or birthright bit, which he also spoke to, but that would be quite tricky because it's an amendment anyway. But again, we'll get into some of these things. Just to mention, it's a lot really, and I think this is not a conversation you can finish in 2 hours. But then I'll mention this one. Sanction on banks over cash shortage at ATM timely. That's from experts. I think this has happened so long that people don't even go to ATMs anymore. They just go to POSs or rely on the usual transfers or using their cards for transactions. So do you think this will move the needle any bit? And some have argued that this is also a way to employ the POS agents as it is, not to talk of the insecurity bit of it, how some of them also aid fraud and the rest. So where do you come in this debate, I would say?
Yes, I'm sure the bank, they've been in business for long, and they should know the customer base that they have for each particular, we're talking about data the other time, the particular branch or the particular location, the particular season, how people demand for cash and all of that. And I'm sure the CBN as well, I don't know how much they have in circulation. These are the things they should bring before the table. And of course, the unserved community, where some of these POS supposed to serve. You understand? But when it comes to the time of you need cash comes, you couldn't have access to it. You want to pay for pepper, you want to pay for this. It's not the man that is the total of his a woman who is selling pepper or selling fish. That the total cost of his or her business is just less than 30,000 or 50,000. You say you want to transfer to and all of that. I think they should do more. They should do more, putting more cash in the circulation, and if you want to employ more of POS agents, you should do that. And now they've increased because of the tariff. If you want to transfer, you're going to pay. The bank are going to charge you, and even the NCC, they are still going to add extra tax. It's becoming too much.
Just before
Nigerian masses to pay. Yeah,
there's a lot of costs that the citizens have to carry. But let's wrap up with blueprint. Of course, the telecoms subscribers kick as NCC approved 50% increase in tariff. But beneath that is just below the picture of Donald Trump swearing in is what I'm interested in. I'm sure Nigerians are interested in this as well. Troops eliminated terrorist sons cause of other terrorists, DHQ. Bello Terrorism has been trouble in that region, especially Zamfara, and he's been on the run according to the military. To understand his son has been neutralized. And so I would like you to speak to that as the issue of security, especially in the northwest.
Yes. I want to say whether win, if you have a win, whether small or big, you should celebrate. It's a big one for them, and of course they should know that they should give whatever form of terrorism group you call yourself, they should give them rent for their money. And this is our military that we are talking about. And of course, we talk about more intelligent gathering. If you can get the son, I think you should get the father as well, or the leader. It's once you get the leader, that's when the other people can, see that they scatter or they fall in place or they align. So it's a good one for us. They should keep it up and keep Nigeria safe and sound. So that's what we are interested in. And you've asked for, I'm sure some of our defense, they have one of the humongous budgets that we have during the last presentation. They should make use of it, and they should, let Nigeria have confidence in them. And of course, lastly, they should work hand in hand with the locals. They need them, and the whistleblowers. You don't just end up when it comes to financial mismanagement. It has to be extended to security tips as well.
There you have it.
If you give us an information leading to this, if you see something, say something.
All right.
So I think that one will make the operation very smoothly.
So there you have it, Mr. Denny Fetai. Thank you so much for your insights on some of these big stories. Appreciate your time. We'll take a moment now. And of course, Jeffrey, we're starting off with the
one important issue of Donald Trump.
Donald Trump matter. But of course, how it affects a lot of other things.
Yeah, especially. Yeah, so we'll be right back after this break. Join us again. Welcome back. Now we talk about Donald Trump's second term. The inauguration took place just hours ago, sweeping executive orders that will affect both America and the rest of the world. And so we're going to look at it in two ways, from the diplomatic end, as well as the issue of trade and bilateral relations. We're going to put all of that together in one box and see how we ensued this conversation. We're being joined on the program by former DG, Nigerian American Chamber of Commerce, Director General, Nigerian Association of Chamber of Commerce, Industries, Mines and Agriculture, NASIMA, Mr. Shola Obademu joins us right here in our Lagos studio. Welcome, sir, to the program.
Thank you very much.
So there's a lot. So when it comes to Donald Trump, that you're wondering which side to start from. But he made a lot of pronouncements yesterday. I took us to some of the things he said that has to do with social issues, economic issues, issues around governance, issues around energy. When you listen to his speech yesterday, from where you sit and what interests you as far as trade relations is concerned, what were the impressions that you got?
Well, personally, I was impressed by some things. I liked his attitude. You know, when you come into a job with full confidence, you know exactly what you want to achieve. You are deliberate about your intentions, and you state them clearly. I think it's a lot to learn from, particularly from us here in Africa, and particularly Nigeria. People that take on political leadership jobs should also come in with the same enthusiasm, with the same energy, despite the fact that he's about 78, I think. He still came in with such vibrancy, and he was able to convince the people that were there that this is a man that could give them some level of safety. Because, you know, he spoke, he was deliberate about the economy as well as migration, because he has smartly linked that to security. And there is no doubt that any average American will be worried about those two issues. So having somebody to come in that could give you some higher sense of safety and economic prosperity promises is a very good one. And we need to learn from that.
So, there's something he said specifically I want you to start from, exactly, when it comes to our trade relations. I know that, I think from Q3 of 2024, when we had the report of our trade relations, our biggest or second biggest export perhaps was the US. Among our 5 countries we export to, came to about 40%. US took about, let's say about 8% of that. So we have a trade relations. So he said, I will overhaul our trade system to protect American workers and families instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries. We will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens. We establish the External Revenue Service to collect all tariff duties and revenues. I've never heard of External Revenue Service. So I needed you to speak to that bit of his speech.
Well, you know, he spoke about this. He has this slogan, America First. So it is quite understandable that, well, you should think and speak that way. Economy was a problem for Americans, as we all know, before President Trump, you know, before his inauguration, and he needed to address that. Everything he said was to protect America and Americans. And it is upon us to now, you see, somebody like President Trump is not somebody you deal with on a pitiable note. You have to be confident to deal with him. So if you are going to, do better in our trade issues, then we've got to sit down and do a lot of homework and find out how we could also benefit from the trade relationships. All our diplomatic outposts, not just in the US, all over the world, you know, there is a level of espionage going on there. Part of their duties is to feed us back, to feed the home country back on the opportunities that are available that we could tap into to benefit. So I think we just need to do some homework, because right now most of our outflows to US in terms of goods and or products is mainly crude oil. It still stays at crude oil. We try to benefit from AGUA, which again is ending in September this year. It started in 2000. The first leg was for 15 years, which stopped in 2015, but there was an extension to this year. So we are not sure yet whether that will be further, stretched. But be it as it may, we did not fully, take advantage of the AGUA opportunities. We didn't. There were opportunities for agric products which were being shipped out mainly on the raw note without much being added in terms of value. Then apparels, we did a bit better in apparels and fashion, but we could have done a lot more in terms of dollar figures, which we didn't take due advantage of.
So, with the posturing of Donald Trump, again, which is nothing new, I think if anything, it has since tripled or quadrupled now since the last time we had him as 45th president. Now, the posturing is make America great again.
Yeah.
Protectionists. This external revenue service, of course, the government is trying to look at ways to see if it's possible. Not that it is starting right away. In fact, the feasibility is even another thing entirely. But that kind of posturing, do you think it maybe overestimates the and this is a very tricky one. Do you think it's an overestimation of America's importance on the global scale? Take a look at Nigeria's biggest trade partners. America is not top 3, for example. You know, it's more China, India, and now there's BRICS forming. So do you think there's some sort of illusion here, thinking we're the biggest, we're invincible, so the world will always come to us? Do you sense that feeling, or it's in reality? Is that what it is?
It's somewhere in between. You know, perception is everything. If you live on a street and everybody on that street calls you an armed robber, whether you are an armed robber or not, you are more or less an armed robber. You've got to an adage says charity begins at home. If you don't promote yourself, who will promote you? He has the right about the America's self-importance image that you are talking about. So if he tries to promote or to build up a picture of an omnipresent America, who is going to quarrel with him? And that makes him a good marketer. He knows his product and is marketing it well. And that's why I said initially that it's something we can gain from. I would love to see Nigerian presidents talk like that about Nigeria. You know, whether it is true at that moment or not, it gives you something to work towards. And I think it's a credit to him and that is what he has sold. And that is why a lot of people, you know, despite whatever impression they had with him 4 or 8 years ago, there has been a turnaround in people's perception of President Trump. And they are all willing to back him up. And on this journey, on this 4-year final journey that he has started.
Well, you know what they always say. They say no man is an island, but in this case, no nation is an island.
Sure.
No matter what, you need others. Yes. I mean, look at China, and I'm not sure if China blows its trumpet as much as America does, but we know
they are doing wonderfully well.
Exactly how much China is doing right now. So, again, do you think this opens? Because you still need investors. Fine. In that room alone, you had up to $1 trillion. You know, you had Jeff Bezos, you had Elon Musk, Zuckerberg, you had Google. So in that room alone, just about 4 to 5 people were almost $1 trillion. But again, do you think this opens America up the more to business, or it sort of shuts them in and people are like, for now, don't approach America. Let us know the direction. Then maybe in a few years' time, we'll approach America.
I think it's attitudinal. America has always been like that anyway.
And still the world goes to America in spite of that.
Yes. China, India, you know, attitudinally they are different. You see China's works more than the speech.
Their words.
Their words, yes. And that has worked very well for them, because by the time, before you know what is happening, China has gone past you. You know, so the attitude is there. But, you know, again, you know, this has been an American way to say a lot, which sometimes even compromises their security situation. Merely listening to CNN, you get a lot of maybe too much information. I recall the last incident at New Orleans, and at a point, one of the agents, whether FBI or something, was worried that the journalists, the media guys were asking too many questions that could compromise the work of the security agents. So it's their way. I think we have to give it to them. You know, you are at liberty to promote your whatever you are selling, and it works for them too. But I think there is a need to. I think humility is a virtue in some ways, but again, if that's the way they are, then you deal with them the way they are.
Let's bring in former Nigeria's High Commissioner to Australia and former Director General of NACIMA, Ambassador Ayola Olukomi. joins us as Ambassador, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. My name is Ayola Olukoni.
Okay, Olukoni.
And it's nice to see my dear brother, the current Director General of NASIMA.
Yeah.
And as a former DG NASIMA, I want to say thank you to him for the good work he's doing.
All right, so
thank you very much for this invitation.
Fantastic one. I'm sure that we'll continue that conversation a lot more. But let's talk about Trump for a moment. And one of the things I want you to speak to, my colleague Kaida has spoken about it, has to do with America's posturing. Trump has now said, and this has to do with diplomacy, he said he wants to be seen as a unifier, a peacemaker. I want you to speak to that element of him, given his boisterous personality and sometimes his, how do you call it now, the word people use, I'm trying to remember, unpredictability of the personality of Trump. I've seen Trump joke around things like nuclear warheads, and he's saying he wants to be a unifier and a peacemaker. Because that is important given what is going on in the Gaza Strip as well as the rest of the world.
Thank you very much for that question. It's a privilege to be here. First, let me say that the second coming of President Donald Trump is a major point, historic landmark in the history of the United States, and also, of course, implicitly in the history of the world as well. And this is the existential reality we all have to deal with. Directly to the question which you ask, I think the world needs so much peace at this particular period. And if President Donald Trump can swing it, then definitely this is going to be, a big plus for him. Definitely. Look at what is going on in Ukraine, the genocide in Gaza. We need an end to all of this. But, like late Mario Cuomo said, I'm very fond of his statement, that you campaign in poetry, but you govern in prose. And watching President Donald Trump yesterday speak, it was like he was still campaigning in poetry. I will end the wars. I will bring peace to the world. But what are the details that are involved? The nitty-gritty of it. This is what, of course, we have to deal with. I happen to have served twice in New York at the UN. Then I also served in Tel Aviv in Israel. So I'm not talking theory. I'm talking about the question of the practical dimension to it. If it can swing the end of the war in Gaza, it will be a major history, because the implication of that crisis in Gaza talks about the Middle East, and the question of peace in the Middle East is very important for the entire world as a whole. So if we can do it, that would be great. But like I said, a lot, and he has to work closely with the United Nations in terms of each and every one of those crises which he said he wants to end. But we wait and see what happens, at the end of the day. He tied up the ceasefire in Gaza to his coming in. How far that is true, we don't know, because I know, and I'm sure, you're very much aware of the work and the role of the Norwegians and other stakeholders as far as the peace in Middle East, especially in Gaza itself, is concerned. But if you can do it, if you can do that miracle, that would be one of the greatest miracles the world needs at this particular period.
It's quite interesting. Well, he's big on religion, so maybe he can just pull off some sort of miracle at this time.
No, let me correct that quickly. President Trump is not good. He's not big on religion. Let us leave that discussion for another day in terms of the question and issues of what people do with religion in the area of politics if you want to win votes. We know what happens in Nigeria. Let us leave that.
Well,
but the most important thing, like you said, is the question and issues of can he do it? Will he be able to do it? But if he wants to do it, he has to do it with other stakeholders who have major role to play in the Middle East. That is it. Of course, the question on issues of immigration, I'm sure those are some of the things which you had sent to me, what's going to happen, the war implication for Nigeria. And I did not hear him mention Africa in the entire speech. I did not hear him mention Africa. The only way you can say implicitly say is mentioned Africa has to do with the question of every terrorist will be pursued all across the place. And of course, we know what is happening in the Sahel. And we do know that the US has presence in the Sahel in terms of fight against terrorists in that particular. But that's, honestly speaking, Africa has better just pull his jackpot up. And I think I heard Ogikiolu to Kauri talking about the question and issues of $1 trillion. There's some big people in there. Let us just forget those big people. Nigeria can do it. I served in the foreign service for 35 years. I serve as DG Nasima, and I know the potential, just like the potential, huge potential. Let us come back home and do it ourselves. And unfortunately, Trump administration came in yesterday. No ambassador in Washington, no ambassador in the UK, no ambassador in the Permission in New York, no ambassador in France, no ambassador in Russia. How do we want to engage the Trump administration without an ambassador on ground in Washington? That's the question I would like to ask you.
Quite a number of issues you've raised regarding religion. Well, it's saying one thing then acting another light, but you know that the inauguration yesterday was big on religion. Even his words, how he talked about God saving him from the assassination attempt, saying his administration will not forget our God. I'm quoting his words. So as he has spoken a lot about religion, but again, we've seen how he's been a bit murky when it comes to that.
Kauri, I'm sorry to jump in.
Oh, dear.
Please go and read Jesus and John Wayne. Jesus and John Wayne. I'll send you the details later on.
Right.
How a group of evangelicals corrupted the nations and corrupted their faith and factionalized the state, the nation. Jesus and John Wayne. Please go and read it. A channel's television interview is not the time and place to discuss all those things. Please go and read Jesus and John Wayne. It talks about how evangelicals, corrupted their faith and fractured the nations. But let's leave that. God is important in all of this.
Certainly.
I sincerely hope that God in America is a beautiful documentary to go and see.
All right.
How the God factor in the White House, and how, of course, it affected the perception of most American presidents.
Well, Ambassador, I don't want us to go down this road, and I think it's a very interesting conversation which you have raised. Maybe another time we can speak to it. But the question I was going to ask, really, and by the way, I'm going to be reading that. Thank you for the recommendation. But the question I was going to ask is about the Africa bit and Nigeria. Some have said President Tinubu should avoid a confrontation with him. Others said, well, of course, will he be confronting Donald Trump? We have bigger fish to fry. But when you said Nigeria can do it, a lot of people watched the inauguration, the build-up, and they were saying Nigeria should learn. So maybe we should, I wouldn't say draw lessons, but look at our situation and see how we can ourselves save ourselves, because clearly he didn't mention Africa, and nobody's coming to save us except us. So what is in this inauguration, the 47th president for Nigeria to maybe learn or look inwards, as you said?
Well, maybe the first thing, of course, as a diplomat, the entire arrangement, the protocol, the inaugurations, everything was pim, proper. That's one thing I think we should learn in the area of protocols, as far as that inauguration. But now to the serious issue which you raised in terms of, what we can learn as Nigeria. If you cast our mind back to when Prime Minister Balewa went to the United States, way back in the beginning of our nation, I think 62, 63, thereabout, you will see how much Nigeria was revered and how much was talked about Nigeria in terms of the potentials of our country. That is key. That is very, very important at the end of the day. And when you talk about the question of the human resources and other things like that, the greatest resources you can have is human resources. It's not even your oil. I serve as High Commissioner in Australia. In Western Australia, Perth alone, there are 100 Nigerian doctors. And I'm not talking about young doctors. 100 Nigerian doctors. That is talking about human resources. One, we should prioritize that. Then secondly, the question of education is key and very important. That is key and very important. I went to the Great Ife and I knew what happened then. Then thirdly, the question of our natural resources too as well is also key and very important in terms of what we have. If you look at the agricultural sector, DG Obadimu is there. I also served as DG Nasim, and I know the potentials in terms of the question of the agricultural sector. Let us move down to the subnational levels. The respective states can do it. We don't have to. The respective states can do it in terms of the potentials. We were involved in the AFCTA. It was acknowledged that without Nigeria, the AFCTA cannot function. So that is another. Then finally, the solid minerals development side, this sector. I heard you mention Elon Musk. They've talked about the question of lithium, the electric vehicles, and things like that. Nigeria is key. Nigeria is important. We must develop the solid mineral sector. If you put all of this together, people will be coming and begging to come and be part and parcel of it. I served 4 years in Israel, in Tel Aviv. And you know the question they asked me? They asked me, when they come back, they say, Ayo, who is the owner of all those places in your country, the forest, which is not cultivated? I'm sure what I'm talking about is quite implicit in what I'm saying. So don't let us look at, say, foreign investors are the only one that can. Yes, it is good. Everybody needs it these days, but it is not for nothing that you find a lot of people across the world coming, and the Americans, of course, are also coming. The aviation sector. Look at the Nigerian aviation sector. Duopoly, Airbus, and Boeing. Boeing is talking to Nigeria to try and see how they can help to develop it. Okay. So that is what I'm saying is that home.
All right, Ambassador. Just a moment. As we begin to wind down, we're going to come back to you in just a moment to speak on the issue of BRICS. Let's bring it to our Lagos studio. I would like you to talk about what we have been repeating literally, but in a different direction, which has to do with the issue of posturing that we talked about. And one thing that is clear, whichever president comes into power, an American president, there's a clarity in terms of ideology. We don't have that here, unfortunately. Politics here is not run by ideology. So you see some of his statements that were, in terms of governance and social issues, everybody know that is what the Republicans stand for. Today, yesterday, and tomorrow. And you can also say that about the Democrats. For instance, I've always said that there's a clear difference in terms of the posturing of Muhammadu Buhari and Bola Tinubu. Muhammadu Buhari seemed to be a bit of a welfarist in his approach. Clearly, President Tinubu is going in the direction of capitalism. I want you to look at how our posturing is affecting development at the end of the day. I use these two gentlemen, these two leaders, because they're in the same political party, and in terms of those posturing, they are clearly in opposite direction.
Okay, I think you are talking more or less about leadership here.
Yes.
Leadership qualities. And like I said at the beginning of the program, we need leaders that are more self-assured, who has clear goals in mind, and leaders who can communicate clearly to the followership their intentions. And, it makes it easier for us to even evaluate them on the job. And in case you want to, maybe after a time you want to come back and have a rerun, so it will be easier for people to judge you. But then, local circumstances are clearly different. If you saw the rally on the eve of the inauguration, the way it went, no loud music, nobody was distributing face caps, people came to listen. So fundamentally, it's different. Rallies here, people, what do they come for? They come to collect freebies and souvenirs and so on, and even cash at times. Yeah. So our circumstances are clearly different. So we are a bit yet to develop. In fact, people who could listen and ask questions to intellectual discussions don't usually come out to our rallies here, which for fears of possibilities of violence and so on. So we need to grow a bit into a more civil environment, which only prosperity to some level can, give us. If people are not comfortable, if there is a lot of, if people are more impoverished, it puts a question on their ability to even choose their own leaders. They cannot choose objectively. So these are the issues. And you don't really, our politicians here, do they even come to campaign on issues-based things? No. They come to dance, and then there'll be somebody by the side to distribute the souvenirs. So it's a different thing entirely.
Okay. I just wanted to land on Ambassador as we wind down, and then this question is about BRICS naturally, rather. So Nigeria is very chummy with BRICS. An announcement has been made, so it's obvious where Nigeria is. Even though Nigeria has tried as much as possible to play here and there, so we're not aligning, we just want the interests of our nation. And Trump, sort of reiterated his threat towards BRICS nations on Monday, stating that countries that are part of this organization would face 100% tariffs on trade with the U.S. if they continue their de-dollarization effort. I don't know. Are we caught in crossfire right now? Was that a good decision to make, Ambassador?
I think what I would just say that, there is a term in Australia where they say, bring it on. I'm sure quietly behind the doors, that's what the members of the BRICS will be responding to President Trump. Bring it on. Because every country also has reciprocity in the field of international relations. That's the issue. Reciprocity is the issue. So definitely, I don't think there is a Trump. I don't think there's a threat in terms of. I'm not surprised it is coming, but of course, look at the BRICS. You're not talking about small little nations, huge. And the emergence of the BRICS is an indication of the new direction as far as international relations itself is going, and international economic relations, not just international relations. So definitely, I think the BRICS are even up to it. You can't threaten anybody at this day and time. Absolutely. Sorry to go back to Gaza. President Netanyahu say every Hamas member is dead. October 7th. Look at the number of days now. So in terms of the BRICS is coming up as a major factor in international economic relations. Take it. But they have their own rules. That's why the question and issues of what I refer to as the invitation to be a partner comes in. Because you have to fulfill some conditions before you become a member of the BRICS. As far as the day, that is what will happen. Nigeria has been invited as a partner. So let's see what we do with that. But before we go again, a new Trump administration is in town. The current administration must and should quickly put in the process of appointing ambassadors. We need a substantive ambassador in Washington to be able to engage the Trump administration, so that some ordinary chargé d'affaires interim will not be asked to go to the Nigerian desk. So when our ambassador wants to see this new Secretary of State, it will become a truly Nigerian ambassador, fully accredited with plenipotentiary powers to the United States of America. That is my summary and recommendation.
We must thank you so much. We must thank you so much, Ambassador Yola Lukani, former Nigeria's and High Commissioner to Australia, former Director General of NACIMA, joining us via Zoom. Also, Mr. Ashala Abadimu, former DG of Nigeria, America Chamber of Commerce, and the DG, Nigeria, that's NACIMA this time, because of time. Thank you so much, sirs, for coming on the program. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your perspective. This is an ongoing conversation, and we hope that when we get these ambassadors, we'll invite you again to speak to the issues we'll be raising with the United States and the rest of the world. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, to bring you more on the program. Join us again.
Yes, the U.S. has a lot going on right now, but here in Nigeria, in the sub-region, there is equally a lot to talk about. So we're focusing on security right now. The springing up of sects here and there, some say no, they're not new. They've been here before. But the obvious dangerous trend is what we're talking about. We've seen recent resurgence of attacks in Borno State. And you're wondering, I thought we had at least gotten a handle on insecurity in the country. There's also talk about government spending towards insecurity, accounting for those funds. Who is funding insecurity in Nigeria, particularly the terrorism we've seen in the north and the banditry? We're joined on the program this morning by two gentlemen. Former Director, DSS Security Consultant, Mr. Mike Ejiofor, joins us from our studio in Abuja. And we have Dr. Williams Park, former Assistant Controller General of Immigration, also Security Consultant, joining us via Zoom from Port Harcourt. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the morning brief. I think naturally we'll begin with the security implication, and I'm talking global security implication of President Trump's second coming, as it has been described now. And I'll begin with you, Mr. Ejiofor, because a lot of people see Trump and they see unpredictability. Some see him and they see, well, a no-nonsense person. Some see him and they see, well, we're not sure if America will play that big brother role in the world when it comes to security and all of that. But Mr. Ejiofor, as a security consultant, what do you see?
Well, I have never been a fan of Donald Trump. And during the inauguration yesterday, I wasn't expecting anything less than what he did. Instead of inaugural speech, so to speak, what we witnessed was maybe a state of the nation rolling out policies that will be implemented immediately. How he intends to implement this, I don't understand. But again, the security implications, because he's not somebody that is predictable. You don't know what his policies are in Africa or particularly in Nigeria. Today is pretty like a friend, tomorrow is an enemy. Some of the hard decisions he reeled out yesterday, I hope it doesn't create major security challenges in the world.
Let me go to Dr. Park, and this is how I want Dr. Park to respond to this. Because of your immigration background, let me reel out some of the immigration decisions, immigration and border decisions that Donald Trump issued. One, bar asylum for people newly arriving at the southern border, moving to end birthright citizenship, although this is of course guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. Is also suspending the refugee admissions program, declaring migrant crossing across the US-Mexico border to be a national emergency. So obviously funding for the border wall is going to be unlocked unilaterally. There's also resuming a policy that requires people seeking asylum to wait in Mexico while an immigration judge decides. And finally, designating cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. From your experience, again, you can speak to the Nigerian experience. What do you see this achieving? Are these things possible, or is just the usual rhetoric?
Well, it was part of his campaign that America for Americans, but he's not new on the job. He's been a former president, so he knows that his country has quite very high institutions that at least would like to cut down his excesses. But I don't think there's anything wrong with any country protecting their borders, especially if they feel that the infiltration of migrants, especially the irregular ones, would indeed be inimical to the economy or political interest or economic interest. I don't see here that he has done anything wrong. But you see, the American country, as we know them, have been quite open, and has been a place where people go and kind of equally share in the American dream. I think that while curtailing the very irregular migration, America has benefited from, migration, because a lot of the people that are there now have been contributing to the economic development of that country in every material particular. He shouldn't be too hard on the world, but then, of course, he has to protect his country within the limits of their laws.
All right, Mr.
That's my
Jofo.
take on that.
Okay, Mr. Jofo, let's come back home to how we're managing our affairs. We know that for some time we recorded a bit of success. For instance, what I mean in terms of the frequency of attacks and fatality, those numbers as reported kind of came down, or incidents came down, but we now saw the resurgence of Lakarawa. We hear another one is springing up again. In your view, from an intelligence perspective, what is the failure that were recorded and is leading to this resurgence of, all kinds of groups now showing themselves and wreaking havoc in parts of the north, especially?
Saying that there's no confirmed resurgence for now of a new group, ACAD. But if you recall that when the alarm was raised on the issue of Lukarawa, yeah, it's been in existence since 2017, but government has been putting measures to check their activities. What we have witnessed, from the secular intelligence obtained, I say intelligence now, obtained by the Nigerian Immigration Service, that was an internal administrative circular, asking their commands and various formations to confirm the existence of this. And that becomes a problem. Mishandling of documents, something that was meant for internal consumption, came to the public, and I think the management of the Nigerian Immigration Service should look into it, because it was not meant for public consumption. Granted, without considering that such a thing exists, I think the Nigerian Immigration Service would have liaised with, and I'm sure they must have done that, liaised with the State Security Service, which is charged with such functions, to establish the existence of this new group. And the information on the group is hazy. You see, they are not recruiting Christians, they are not recruiting Muslims, they are recruiting their form of human trafficking. They are talking about African religion. So the information is sketchy, needs to be properly investigated and confirmed before we take any decision on the emergence or existence of such a group.
Mr. Park, okay, let me say with you, Mr. Ejiofor, before I go to Mr. Park. One of the things that crossed my mind, Mr. Park, I'm going to come to you in a moment, and this has to do with when we raise the issue of whether it's a new group or an old group or the ones we're familiar with, and the resurgence, for instance, the Lakarawa issue, resurgence here, I'm referencing it contextually to the issue of more attacks, and the military has been doing their bit to take them out, although we also have recorded collateral damages, which is another conversation in its entirety. We're going to speak to that. The issue around ungovernable spaces, I would like you to help us, Mr. Ejiofor. How do we navigate ungovernable spaces? Because those are the spaces that are prone or vulnerable to some of these attacks. And when we raise the issue with security agencies, the issue of ungovernable spaces, what do we do with ungovernable spaces, Mr. Ejiofor, if you will?
Yeah, well, you see, I've discussed this issue of ungoverned spaces. First of all, before you talk of ungoverned spaces, what is the presence of government in that area? Most areas we talk of ungoverned spaces. You take, for instance, are the local government administration existing in that area? In this large expanse of land we call ungoverned spaces, you see that some of the local governments, the chairmen operate from the state capitals. They don't get to the areas of administration thereby depriving the people of, and if the security, if they are not there, security will also not be available. So the issue of ungoverned species must start from local administration before the security agencies are drafted in.
All right, Mr. Park, I think I'll also raise that question with you as well on this issue of ungoverned spaces, especially given your background in immigration. We have all of this porous border all over the place that seem to be a bit of a challenge. I think I remember one of the former chief of army staff also mentioned he put the record straight because people were throwing a lot of numbers, but he now put the accurate record as to what it is. So maybe you can remind us of how many borders we have and what cultural impacts, what in terms of culture is affecting the ability to be able to close our borders effectively and govern Nigeria more efficiently, because culture is also important. I say that to say about the issue of Niger Republic and some parts of the north, like places like Kaduna and Jigawa.
Well, thank you very much. Like my friend Mike had pointed out, if you don't have the presence of government or governance in a particular place, you find people occupying them. But the issue is from our history. When the countries were created, they were just created arbitrarily, and separating people that have similar cultures. In our service, we have what we call approved border. An approved border is where you can come and have the immigration, the custom, the planned quarantine, and all such people, and do their job. But of course, we have this stretch of land and landmass that we don't have approved borders, and people, especially irregular migrants, seem to follow those areas into our country. And you can't rule out the fact too that criminals can equally go through those areas. In trying to improve the management of our border management, I think the government is doing much, especially now with trying to have digital security, where to cover those areas where you could not have human beings stretching all through the borders, so that we can have information of what is happening outside the approved borders, and then of course from a strategic base, we could always provide policing in such areas. But there's no doubt about it that we have a lot of landmass border that is quite not protected. It is expensive to do so, but it is not undoable. I believe that government should go into digital security to cover such areas for the benefit of the citizens and the security of the country.
Well, at this point, there's still lots of concern about the budget for security at the National Assembly. They talk about it being inadequate, and some say, can we even account for the previous budget and the spendings of security agencies? But yes, it was immigration that raised the alarm about this so-called new sect that it operates in Kaduna. The head is in Plateau, and all of that. They are involved in human trafficking and the rest. And I drew some sort of inference from Donald Trump and his, building the wall strategy. A lot of people thought it was outrageous at first, but it looks like a lot of people are now catching up to that idea. So specifically speaking now, if we were to say, well, we've identified that, or at least we know that this porous border is really responsible largely for insecurity, particularly for the northern states that share borders with countries up north. Do you think we'll have the political will and, more importantly, the kind of responsibility in transparency and accountability in using funds to achieve security, whatever infrastructure we choose to, at that side of the border?
My suggestion would be that whatever amount that is provided in the budget for defense, or for immigration, or for the army, there should be effective oversight function by the legislature. If you give people money to spend on a particular project, then it follows that those who have oversight function should make sure that it is spent and it is spent properly. If that is done, it will cut down some of the issues in terms of not having enough equipments to fight this cross-border irregular migration and cross-border criminality. Again, I believe that there has to be some strategic alliance with our neighbors, those countries that we have borders with. There was something like that with Niger, what they call the joint force, comprising of both Niger and Nigerian security forces. And while they were there, it was quite, they were able to contain to a large extent, I believe, the cross-border crimes, including the new sects you're talking about, both in Sokoto and otherwise. I think that effort should be made to have this good relationship with our borders, be it Niger, be it those in Benin Republic or in Cameroon, and we should have good relationship with our neighbors. If you do, then we can cooperate in terms of intelligence gathering, and of course, every effort to indeed contain cross-border crimes, which will affect both countries, affect the region, and affect everybody.
Well, Mr. Jofo, let me come to you now. Thank you, Dr. Park. And it's on the same conversation around spending, right? I've never heard that we've budgeted enough for fighting insecurity in the country. It's never enough, and that's on the one hand. But some other people say that's a lot of money to begin with. Security gets a huge chunk of our budget, even more than some sectors that people think may be even more important to the growth of our nation. Again, that's a debate. So why is it that security spending, or at least the budgetary process, has always been, would I say, less transparent, really? Because you can always tell that every year there'll be the question, what did you use the money for? Before you say it's not enough, what did you use this money for? How did this money go? We see our soldiers, as people say that they don't have enough manpower, that the terrorists come with superior firepower. So why do we keep having that issue with security spending?
Well, we have such problems because we have a lot of security challenges confronting the country. And I'm even surprised. I've always accused the National Assembly of improper oversight, of their functions. But it gladdened my heart yesterday when I saw that the chairman of the House Committee on Security and Intelligence was now raising the issue that the budget was not enough. How much was given to the security and intelligence? Which is $595 billion. Out of this, you have about 270 something billion for overhead, and you have 117 for recurrent, that's salary, and operational costs. That is grossly inadequate. And since the issue was raised, because of numerous security challenges, plethora of security challenges confronting the country, I think we need to up the budget because, like it's always said, if literacy is expensive, why don't you try literacy? Now, the proper thing to do, because the fulcrum of all meaningful development of all the budget we have is security. If we don't have a security environment within which to operate, all the budget we are doing is just hopeless. So we must prioritize the issue of security, and that is why people say that in the issue of budgeting, it can never be enough in terms of security. Because we are talking of salaries, we're talking of welfare, you are talking of training of staff, you are talking of acquiring equipment. This is cost money. And some of them you can't easily get them off the shelf. You budget for this year, possibly next year, you have not gotten such equipment, especially with the military. Now, if you look at the budget release, that becomes another problem. It's a different thing to budget and another thing to get the release. What performance are we having in terms of budget? We are still operating 2023, 2024, 2025 budgets because they are not fully implemented. Some of them are 25%, 40% performance. So you don't say that the budget, the money is there. The most important is that if you budget, you must release. And again, I've always said it, like the National Assembly, if you begin to play in terms of oversight, you shouldn't be within the security subsector because they look for what do they call it? This project. So they ask you to bring project to do for them, and this money is not sufficient, and yet people are still asking for more money. So it's a problem. It would never be enough.
Okay, Mr. Park, let's take it to Mr. Park. I know that the president was at a African high-level meeting on counterterrorism in Abuja sometime in April last year, and I want to read what he said because I want to look at the regional implication of perhaps dropping the ball and not facing these things headlong. He said, look at the illegal mining that plagues so many of our nations today. Those who think illegal mining has no connection with financing terrorism are sorely mistaken. The international community has both moral and legal obligation to help this cause because it's external finance, not African money, that fuels illegal operations. We've always talked about the fact that there's a suspicion that there are external financiers of terrorism, and we seem not to be able to put our hands on it. I would like you to speak to that element. Is it a question of diplomacy, or we're not just brutally honest in addressing the issue of foreign financing or terrorism, because that is one of the biggest challenges we have besides the boots on the ground?
However you look at it, whether it's illegal mining, it's organized crime, transnational crime. Whether it's illegal bunkering, whether it's poaching of endangered species in terms of animals, these are organized crimes. And so you can't rule it out. So it's important that, like I mentioned, you have corporations and good relationship with your neighbors. It will curb that. It's equally important that we have security agencies in our border communities and make the border communities a place that people can come and live, not a deserted area. Once people do not find amenities, the welfare of the people at the border communities are not taken care of, then you find criminals, be they terrorists, bandits, take over such spaces that you now call ungoverned spaces and begin to implement their own rules and laws, begin to extort money from those people, begin to manipulate them and indoctrinate them.
Right.
So they're all connected. There is international connection because it is transnational organized crime. Anyhow you want to look about it. We don't refine most of the things they mine in Nigeria. No. Most of the oil that are stolen illegally are not refined in Nigeria. Most of the games that are pushed are sold abroad. In terms of human trafficking, it equally involves organ harvesting. And these are sold at higher prices in other climes where the currencies are a little bit stronger than ours.
Right.
And so you find people trying to make money out of these things. And so there's international connection.
Well, Dr. Park, certainly these things do not happen in isolation, but we've heard how we have some of the finest men and women in our security agencies. We even have agencies for tracing these monies. So I expect that the expectations of Nigerians will not be at least shattered in this new year. But we have to thank you so much, Dr. Williams Park, former Assistant Control General of Immigration Security Consultant, as well as Mr. Mike Ejiofor, former Director at DSS. Thank you once again for your time on the show.
Thank you.
We'll take a quick break now, and when we return, artificial intelligence takes the center stage. How do we ensure that we're able to leverage technology to fight corruption while people who are engaging in corruption are using technology as well? Stay with us. We'll be right back. Let's talk artificial intelligence, blockchain technology. There's a tendency to just think these things are to make your work easier when it comes to blockchain, or you think about it as cryptocurrency, but you can apply these things to virtually all facets of life. And this morning, we want to see how we can use this to fight corruption, procurement fraud, all of that in governance, and of course those who aid and abet it outside of governance. We're joined by CEO NatQuest, Dr. Salisu Uba, who has his PhD in digital procurement and supply management, also a fellow, Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, CIPS. Joins us virtually from London. Welcome to the Morning Brief, Dr. Uba.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
As I said earlier on, a lot of people just think of blockchain, AI, and they think, oh, how can I use it to edit my text or tell it to do some task for me, or how can I use it for cryptocurrency? But clearly the applications are wider than that. And, you know, procurement is a major deal when it comes to fighting corruption in Nigeria. We're going through another budgeting process now. And sometimes you see quotes, you're wondering, how is a computer 100 million naira? What's going on? Right. So how can we better leverage artificial intelligence, particularly to ensure that governance is more transparent, is more effective and efficient, and the right monies go to the right places?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's quite interesting. Fundamentally, we need to understand why is blockchain technology and AI really important in today's public procurement space. Now, of course, a lot has been said around blockchain, but a lot of people are quite familiar with blockchain technology because of its application within the financial sector. But if you look at broadly its application, particularly within supply chain, right, and particularly supply chain, when we look at procurement, and procurement, public procurement is quite significant. Recently, there was a study conducted by the European Commission on the use of blockchain and AI across public sector in almost all part of the world. And it's quite fascinating how different countries are using blockchain technology and AI to transform public procurement. Now, one of the key important aspects to emphasize is that people don't really understand the importance of public procurement. Everything you see in this world is created by someone somehow, and there is an element of procurement in it, because you need to source for the right material, for the right product or services in order to transform a particular process, product, or even infrastructure to become of public use. Now, when the process is not efficient, is not transparent, then of course it has a significant impact, whether in terms of the quality, the output. Take, for example, in healthcare, right? In defense, in manufacturing. Everything that we consume has some element of procurement. Now, as regards to blockchain technology, the aspect of decentralization, immutability, and most importantly, the transparency of recording information, right? Because it's a database, right, that we transact information, we store data. But you cannot start talking about blockchain technology when fundamentally we have not digitized our processes, right? And that's the fundamental aspect of the starting point. Once you digitize your process, then you think about digitalization, which is creating a business process, interface between different agencies, departments and agencies, as well as suppliers across all segments or categories of different spends. But for AI today is a big deal because it has a lot of opportunities around generative AI, predictive, preventive. These are all things that has a lot of relevance and application within public procurement, particularly in a country like Nigeria, where we have enormous opportunity to really streamline and properly utilize our resources, because our resources are scarce, right? Government is always complaining, looking for ways to borrow more money to perhaps fund capital projects and recurrent expenditure. So we need to give really incredible amount of emphasis on digitalization and use of blockchain technology in order to transform the way we buy product and services across different part of the government.
So I know that when it comes to taxation, when it's processed right now, where we're looking at reforming the tax laws in Nigeria. There are 4 bills before the National Assembly. We're making progress in terms of the contentious element that has to do with politics. But the tax law has a fiscalization element, which is tracking transaction, which makes it easy for the tax officers to be able to get our monies and it will not escape anywhere. In fact, there are penalties in Section 100 and Section 101 of a particular bill. But when you come to procurement, how are we going to be able to use AI to check corruption? Is it in the quotes, the procurement itself, or what exactly can we use AI to do when it comes to procurement? I use the issue of tax as a model of knowing we know what we're trying to do and how to do it. But for procurement, for those who don't understand how it can come, AI can help. How can it help?
Right. I think that's really interesting. So there's actually a published report by Sects, which is the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, is the global leading organization, professional organization for procurement and supply chain, which operates globally. There are fundamentally 13 steps in any procurement, but predominantly public procurement. We have to think about the process of planning, right? How do we arrive at our need assessment, right? Who is responsible for declaring that there is absolute needs for a particular product or services across different organizations? That's number one. Number two, we have to think about aggregation. What does aggregation means? It means Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Defense, CBN, and all agencies of Nigeria, because if you look at all of them, they come under the federal government of Nigeria, and they are all funded by the public money. Now, aggregation means how can we collectively leverage on our buying, powers, right? Economic of scales, right? Then you have to think about your routes to procuring that product and services, whether you are doing competitive tendering, whether you are doing selective tendering, or whether you have a framework agreement where you have a few selected suppliers, or even a routine supplier selection where you have a catalog of buying product and services. And then, of course, you have to think about the evaluation, and then from evaluation to contract award, and then, of course, post-contract, which is quite critical, down to implementation and post-contract up to the exit. So in every element of this process, as I have mentioned, there's a significant amount of need to digitize the process. Digitizing the process is knowing who is responsible as an end user, right, to declare that there is need for a particular item. If it is a software, for example, how do we ensure that the existing license that we have in Ministry of Defense or Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Communications can be utilized by existing ministries, so that we are not duplicating our spendings? But we need access to information and transparency across the process. You cannot get that when you have a manual procurement process, right? Then from supplier selection, that's where it is interesting. If I ask you today, who are the top 10 contractors of the federal government of Nigeria where the government has a strategic spend? The information is not there. As a professional, I don't know, right? So do Nigerians, they don't know, right? And that's critical, because we have to think about who are these suppliers, right? What is the spend? What type of contracts are they getting, right? And how is this contract being implemented? So it's a process that needs to be digitized and integrated into a centralized platform. And then you think about contract. We all know the case of the PNID, right?
Right.
Is an issue of contract management, right? Do we have a centralized contract management system in Nigeria? No. It needs to be digitized so that you track and know who is responsible for what, when.
All right.
If there is any cost overrun, how, right? What is the impact?
Well,
what is the reason for that cost?
Dr.
Right?
I can bet
and then
you
you
that.
think about cost contracts, right?
Right. I can bet you that by the time we do some of these things right, I think you can clearly see why there's some sort of lethargy in ensuring that things are done right, because you still find a lot of times that those in charge of departments, agencies, ministries are the ones using their own companies to get some of these contracts. And it's quite funny how some of these things you can see the trail online, even though it's not together. But if you're able to follow the trail, you realize that, wait a minute, the name of the director of this company is the same as the name of the person in charge of the same agency, giving either feeding contract or so I think when we're able to do this right, then we can see the quantum of corruption really that has gone through that system. But I want to speak to something as we wind out on a final note. If we want to institute this in our system, we also have to look back and ask, how are we educating, how are we including this in our education curriculum to be sure that whoever is graduating from school has at least some sort of understanding of either blockchain technology, artificial intelligence. So if this person is drafted to the civil service, the person is going to do well, because you still have people in the civil service that are struggling to use computers and now want to use AI and blockchain. So I want you to speak to that as we wind down. I've seen your education trajectory. A lot of the knowledge you got, you didn't get here in Nigeria. So we need to deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Awareness is quite key. And of course, I always say the fundamental of any society is about knowledge and skills. And knowledge is what we have learned, and skills is our ability to practice what we have learned. And no society can thrive without the application of knowledge into practice. But again, in terms of procurement, I think predominantly there is significant, improvement in terms of the knowledge of procurement, right, as quite a critical aspect of our lives, right? For example, Kaduna State University is one of those universities that was first accredited by the Chartered Institute of Procurement to provide a specialized, highly recognized global procurement and supply chain certifications. And again, I know, of course, the Sects Nigeria is doing incredibly a lot in terms of bringing a kind of collaboration between the Bureau of Public Procurement. But what I see, the big opportunity or the big picture here, today, we need a digital marketplace for public procurement in Nigeria.
All right.
And this is where you can tap into the opportunities of AI, right? To not just dictate, unusual transactions and anomalies, but of course it can serve as a critical tool, right? That public organizations can use in order to enhance their processes.
Well, this is yet another wake-up call, Dr. Oba. We have to really wake up and do things the right way. Else, I don't want to say the world will move past us, but we have to thank you so much for this wake-up call yet again. We've been speaking with Dr. Salisu Uba, CEO of NatQuest. NatQuest, of course, deals in supply chain, getting the right people for those who need it, and also he has his PhD in digital procurement and supply management. Thank you for your time, Dr. Uba.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
We'll take a moment now, and when we return, we'll talk about food. And don't forget, we still have the biggest trending topics for you. So stay with us right here. We'll be right back. The farmer, Mayowa Lawrence Sekundaya, joins us to bring us up to speed as to what smart farming is. Mayowa, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
One of the things I like about the new age is that innovation is driving this new age. So the way we do things before is now obsolete. So walk us through what smart farming really is.
But like the word smart is, it simply means that doing things differently, technology inclusion, ensuring that optimizing profitability is in the fore of food production. Beyond the cultural practice that we used to know, we're now adopting technology, using new means basically to ensure that food production is achieved. Um, you know, whilst ensuring that we minimize food loss, post-harvest losses, just ensuring that we're doing things differently while optimizing profitability and ensuring resource optimization.
I know that post-harvest loss is a big conversation. We're going to talk about that because the numbers, as of the last time I knew, was about between 30 to 40%, and that is outrageous. So you've spoken broadly about smart farming. So walk us, you use a scenario for us, some kind of a
Yes.
simulation for us, so that people who still do not grasp what you're talking about can practically see. Because for people who grew up in the village, they see people go to
Yeah.
the farm, they do this clearing of the bushes, and then they till, they plant, and they see it grow, they water it over time, they clear the weeds, and then harvest time comes, they remove it, and the processing continues from there. So what
Yes.
exactly is different in this smart farming
Okay, so
beyond what I
I'm going to walk
explained?
you. I'm going to walk you through some real life situations. When I came into the space, into the agri space in 2019, we saw farmers who need very, very large expanse of land that they do not really know the measurements, produce large food using OPV seeds. OPV seeds sometimes can be third generational seeds. And by third generational seeds, it means that they simply harvest seeds from fruits that are damaged that they cannot sell, and most times in the data for post-harvest losses, about 50% of that. So you just harvest those seeds, dry them in the next planting cycle, which most times, over 80% of the farmers depended on rain. So it meant that if farmers were going to grow our food, if rain doesn't come, they don't produce foods, right? And it will be shocking that my first engagement with smallholder farmers talking about irrigation, and they were completely, it was a completely strange conversation to them because they felt that without rain, they could not farm. And if they were going to have to have something that was not natural for rain, it means that they were also going to conjure rain. I mean, they'll have to go traditional to pay a native doctor to make rain fall. So they didn't have an understanding that they could produce from January to March. Rather, they would wait from March till June. Excuse me, till July, and then the August break, and then continue again. So without the rain, these farmers cannot produce. And so what as we started introducing to these farmers, of course, was closing the knowledge gap to say that, hey, you can produce even from January, especially from December to March. Just all you need to understand is the concept of irrigation. So we started introducing them to irrigation setup, global best practices for production, for food production, soilless farming, meaning they didn't have to produce food. They didn't have to nurse certain food on the floor, on the ground rather. However, they could use other means like the potting soil, the cocoa pits. Basically, what they needed to understand was the function of the soil, and then introduce technology that could do the same thing, and they will achieve much more results. So we saw over time, especially during the course of about 3 to 4 months, where farmers now saw that they could produce food without necessarily using soil. Now, this is not even talking about using the greenhouse production yet. Yes, the greenhouse technology was there for them to nurse using nursery trays, potting soil, cocoa pits, and then we also introduced them to the hybrid seeds, which ensured that they bought seeds from seed companies and they could maximize the potential of one particular seed, getting more yields and making more monies, right? And then other technology that came with ensuring that they manage pest better, they used less water, and they depended less on rain.
All right.
let's talk about the commercials now, the financials,
Yeah.
if you may. Aside the fact that this provides food on the table, how profitable is farming for smallholder farmers? And I'll give you a scenario, right? So I
Yeah.
put in, overall, I put in ₦1 million for everything, right? And as a smallholder farmer, what kind of profit should I expect if I am doing things the right way?
So first, we have to first understand that there are different value chains in agriculture, and it depends on which value chain. I'm going to speak to the horticulture value chain, which I am currently driving developments in the rural community. So, investing ₦1 million in the horticulture value chain, that number that amount of money is also subject to if you're going to be investing, what's the size of the farmland you're investing in, and what type of irrigation you're putting in place, right? And last year we engaged the smallholder farmers, asking them what had changed, and what we realized is a 600% increase in their income by just following the best practices, introducing technology, adopting technologies, adopting hybrid seeds, adopting the new method of pest management, which is the IPM, introducing the soilless means of producing seed, using the best agronomy practices, basically. And again, when we say 600%, it does not also mean that you invest ₦1 million and make ₦6 million. It may not be so. However, we saw a situation where farmers, not necessarily introducing irrigation system yet, but were able to optimize a small size of farm. Well, let me say that again. They stayed on a small size of farm rather than pursue or use the large expanse of land that they are used to. Followed our method of best practices and getting yields up to about more than 600% of what they would have naturally gotten if they used the old method, or what the other farmers who have not adopted technology got from the last production cycle.
So I'm going back to my question, because for a lot of people
Yes.
want to be able to envision this, and I know farming is not for the weak, it's not for the faint at heart.
Yes.
Okay, it is a very emotional process. Imagine, you plant and then it's gone overnight. But I still want you to speak to that because I think it's also a process of gathering data, so we're able to understand this person put in a certain amount overall and was able to make this kind of profit. What you've been able to say is by adopting some of the techniques for for smart farming, they were able to increase by 600%. But I'm still using that example. Put 1 million in. What at least in what range would you expect as profit if you do all these things right?
Okay, so for horticulture, if what you have is 1 million, you're probably looking at having a standard farm for 2 plots to 3 plots, a standard farm. And for a standard farm for 2 plots to 3 plots, you are most likely going to be at the peak of the season, most likely going to be having about in gross sales of about 4 to 5 million naira in sales. And by peak of the period, we're talking June, July, August.
Fantastic. So clearly, it is profitable if you do things the right way. We're glad we're able to have this conversation to encourage a lot of people who want to get into it, Jeffrey.
So just as in winding down, so I know you play in the horticulture sector, but in other sectors as well. So in terms of smart farming, I don't know whether you can speak to the issue of fishery. Sometimes when we talk about farming, a lot of people don't talk about when it comes to agriculture generally. We just say go to the farm. So let's broaden it beyond just farming. Let's go to fishery. For instance, if you were to bring in smart farming into fishery, what kind of technology are we looking at in that space?
So again, fishery is not a value chain of specialty for me. It's not a value chain that I have paid attention to. So I can't speak to what is attainable in terms of smart farming for fishery. Yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that. That I cannot speak to the subject of smart farming, because for every value chain in agriculture has its own specialty, and you have to be there for 2 to 3 years for you to say, 2 to 5 years for you to say that you know all that it is to be known in that value chain. Agriculture is, like you say, is not for the weak hearted. It's not for the weak hearted.
Okay, absolutely. I wish you could speak. I think you should consider it at the end of the day, because I would have gone from fishery to livestock to all of, these things I will consume every other day. But must thank you so much. Maiwa Lawrence Ekundari is a farmer joining us via Zoom from Ado-Ekiti. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
All right, guys, let's take a look at some of the things you've been saying on X. Well, the X-man himself was there at the inauguration yesterday, Saturday. I do not know whether he's the 40, what do we call Elon Musk?
47th and 47.5.
No, assistant 47th president of the United States.
But hey,
he's literally everywhere.
He gave hundreds of millions of dollars towards the election of Donald Trump. And of course, he's a Trump guy. He wants free speech and all of that. So it's obvious that they are best buddies.
Well, free speech is relative when it comes from the mouths of people like Trump and Elon Musk. So free speech is totally relative, because what we see Elon Musk do with free speech, we're beginning to ask, is it really free speech, or you just wanted opportunity to talk more? You spent 44 billion. Anyway, that's another conversation.
I see that Donald Trump yesterday launched coins.
No, Trump launched first before his inauguration.
Yeah, but yesterday he gave I think 10% is for public. But yesterday was a major unveiling, particularly for the gold.
But it has dropped. That coins has dropped by almost 50%
Who does that? I thought
it's a meme coin.
I thought you're meant to separate these things.
It's meme coin. Perhaps that's why it's called a meme coin. So let's find out what the people are saying. Donald Trump has been sworn in, making an extraordinary political comeback, as to put it. This is coming from AMR Pakistani. That's what you call yourself. Donald Trump's return as the 47th president marks a remarkable political comeback. It will be interesting to see how his leadership shapes the future of the United States, especially in a world facing complex global and domestic challenges.
Lots of congratulations coming in for Donald Trump, but would like you to take a listen to a video in which he declared that effective immediately, the U.S. government will officially recognize only 2 genders, male and female. Well, this has gotten a lot of people talking, but this is one of the many decisions that Donald Trump made yesterday. So, let's take a listen to Donald Trump.
Policy of the United States government that there are only 2 genders, male and female.
Kari, this is why I say Nigerian politics doesn't have ideology. So Republicans are clear on this position. So even Republicans who don't like him, but they hold on to this position, male and female. The Democrats, you can be anything. You can identify as anything. So you cannot just wake up and cross carpet. You cannot suddenly just be pro-gay and anti-gay. In 5 years, you have gone like this.
You see people that swing.
Just swing like this.
Born again, they
just swing like this. Okay, Kyrie,
Abba says this is a much needed policy. Thank you, Trump. Are you from America? What are you thinking, Trump?
Farouk, big call that is. I love how he's being straightforward with his business friends.
Alrighty, you see, Oluyide Olatunji says you gotta give it to the man. He stuck to his word and delivered. But Jeffrey, this work from home that Donald Trump is ending for government workers, Elon Musk had done it for X. Now Donald Trump is doing it for government workers. I'm sure some are praying, can we have COVID again and some sort of lockdown so we'll go back home?
All right, so we also have this one coming in. Federal government planning to distribute 75,000 naira to 70 million Nigerians to ease economic hardship. Is it households now? So for further contextualize this, I think this money most of the time is about 25,000 naira every month for 3 months. That's the usual plan that the government has. But let's just take one. Nigerians are neither beggars nor slaves. If the federal government were not plagued by corruption, they will focus on creating jobs and so many other things you said.
There's no way we will go without showing you what these girls, Nigeria's under 19 women's team, are doing in New Zealand. These girls are doing great stuff with cricket. Come on, guys. Sorry, they beat New Zealand, I should say, by 2 runs at the ICC Under 19 World Cup in Malaysia. It's holding in Malaysia, but they beat New Zealand.
Nigeria and cricket in one phrase.
That's
beautiful.
And you should see how Piety plays. Once Piety hits it, it's in the bush. It's beautiful to see.
It's beautiful.
Congratulations, guys.
But you know, cricket. I mean, what is it called? That ball they hold?
Yeah.
It's very dangerous.
You ball and
it's very dangerous. Very dangerous. All right, that's it on the program. Thank you so much for your time and company. Sunrise Daily is up next at the top of the hour. I'm Jeffrey Ozama. Bye bye.
I'm Kaido Kikilu. Stay with Channels Television and have a great day.